Today we're going to go through fuselages. Fuse for short, we've got a small, medium and large fuses, and they all differ by 30mm. The large is a 540, the medium is a 510, and the small is a 480. So the length of the fuses are measured from the tip all the way to the front of the mast. Now, the reason we measure it to the front of the mast rather than just the fuse itself is because people want to know the distance from the front wing to the tail wing, basically. And by measuring it from tip to front of mast, it gives us a constant, because when we change the size of our front wing, basically the fuse essentially gets longer or shorter. So we've just made it standard, front of the mast, that's our length. So for the numbers 540, 510 and 480, that's not measured from the length of the fuse, but it's meant to the length of the fuse plus this little bit to the front of the mast. I guess the tip of the socket, essentially. People always ask which fuse is best for me, and the easier answer is just stick with the medium, and you can adjust longer or shorter to go from there. But if you don't want to have the risk of buying two, I'm going to explain to you why you'd go large or small over the medium. Now the large is really good for beginners because it basically makes everything move a little bit slower. The turns are longer, wider turns. The pumping is a slower pitch change. It's going to make everything a bit flatter. Now, as I said, for beginners, I really like using the large because it allows you to basically have more time between your pumps, have a slower cadence pump, and also your turns are slower. It makes everything more stable. When I teach, I use the large fuse with a 188 AR tail, and it makes everything really slow and smooth, and the changes aren't too bad. For an advanced rider, the small fuse is probably what you're looking at. And this is for advanced riders that are comfortable with shorter, sharper pumps and want to be turning in tighter arcs like in the pocket. So the smaller fuse allows you to accelerate faster because our fuse length is less, the tail's closer to the front wing. So when we do a pump, we actually keep everything tighter, and it's shorter and sharper, shorter, sharper, faster pitch changes. Now, as you can imagine, if you're learning, the small fuse is going to be a little bit trickier. It's more maneuverable, it's more twitchy, but that's what advanced riders are going to want. On top of that, when you pair the same tail with a small fuse and you put the same tail with a large fuse, it actually changes the way that tail feels. A large fuse is going to make the tail feel bigger. A small fuse is going to make the tail feel smaller. And what does a smaller or bigger tail make? What does a smaller or bigger tail do? It makes it feel more or less stable. A bigger tail is going to be more stable, or the same tail with a longer fuse is going to be more stable. The same tail with a smaller fuse is going to be less stable. So if you're looking for less stability and more maneuverability, small fuse is where it's at. If you're looking for more stability and less maneuverability, the large fuse is where it's at. Now, if you don't quite know, the medium fuse is the obvious place to start. And to me, it's a really good best of both worlds. I can still accelerate, I can turn a pretty good arc, but it does compromise a little bit in it's not super long, so it's not quite as stable. It's not super short, so it isn't super maneuverable. The other thing to take note of is you're going to get used to, your brain's going to calibrate which fuse feels best to you. So personally, I started on the long, went to the medium, then went to the small. And that's how I've and every time I took a jump, it actually felt really strange for the first session. I now predominantly ride on the medium, but if I'm using the medium for a long time and I switch to the small, it feels really pitchy. When I then go from the small back up to the medium feels really sticky to pump. It's like I can't change the same, create the same angle of attack and pitch to change it. If I then go to the large again, I'm feeling that again. But if I go from the large back down to the medium, it's now feeling pitchy again. Basically, I'm saying give yourself time to get used to the equipment that you have. If you feel like the medium when you first try it isn't quite right for you, test it out for another 5 or 6 sessions and you're probably going to get used to it. Don't go and buy a new one straight away. We want you to get used to it and basically get the most out of it. If you have gotten used to it and it still doesn't feel quite right for you, you can change down a size. Alternatively, you can just get a tail that's either bigger or smaller, and that's going to make it feel less pitchy or more pitchy depending on what you're wanting. So for more pitchiness, smaller tail. For less pitchiness, bigger tail with the same fuse, or you can change down longer or smaller fuse. That's pretty much it. Fuse lengths. Looking forward to having you guys try them out and give us your feedback.